There we go. Perfect. All right. So let's move ahead talking about increasing your club's curb appeal, the theme of tonight's webinar. So you can see that I put a picture of the house there. And most of you, I think the idea of curb appeal is pretty straightforward. But for those that it might be a little bit of a more obscure term, curb appeal refers to the attractiveness of the exterior of a residential or commercial property as viewed from the street. So if I jump back to that picture that I showed you, if I'm standing at the street, I'm interested in this house, and I'm looking at the picture on the left versus the right, the question comes up, which one would I be more interested in? Well, almost without a doubt, unless I guess you really like horror movies or maybe Halloween, you're probably going to say the one on the right. The reason being, it's a lot more inviting, it looks a lot warmer, a lot greener, the sun is shining. There's many reasons why it's a lot more appealing, right? And so we're gonna look at our Rotary Club from that same perspective. Now, I want you to keep in mind that when we talk about curb appeal, we are talking really about judging a book by its cover, right? We're looking at what you see from the outside. So as we talk about things tonight, I am going to be speaking from a superficial place in the sense that what do people see when they look in your club sort of as an outsider or as a prospective member. But I want you to remember, and as certainly the membership committee or within your club or even at the district level will tell you, it's almost more important that you keep in mind what how engaged and how involved and how welcome the members feel once they become members. So this is really a first step in terms of getting them to think, oh, this might be something I'm interested in. This club looks really fun. They were very welcoming. But also don't think that it stops there in the sense of, haha, we got them in the door. We've got them on a committee. Now they're not allowed to leave. We want to make sure that this is really just a first step, but then the next step becomes, maintaining that appeal and maintaining that engagement with the members. So we don't want to lose sight of that. Okay. Now, if you were on the last webinar about using Facebook pages, you probably found that to be very an informational webinar, I guess instructional webinar. It was very much, here's how to do these steps and whatnot. This webinar is going to be a little bit different. This one will be more similar to what you would have experienced with the Creating Your Club's Public Image webinar. There are some similarities. It's not going to be so much, here's exactly the 6 steps you need to do, because increasing your club's curb appeal really depends on your club. It depends on your club's current curb appeal. It depends on what you want to change. It depends on what your club considers to be curb appeal. So I'm going to talk about some things that may or may not pertain to your club. You might be really good at some of those things already in your club, and there might be others where you say, yep, we definitely need to work on that. So hopefully everybody will come away from this webinar with something useful, with some good information to take back to their club, to use to help promote their club. But certainly not every club or not every member on this webinar is going to take away the same things, and that's okay, that's great. So let's start by, I mentioned what is curb appeal. And before I move forward, what I want you to do is I want you to visualize for about 30 seconds your club. And I want you to think about your club's curb appeal. Now, many of you have been members in your club for a long time. So this can be difficult because you have so much internal knowledge and you've formed relationships with the people in your club and there's bonds there and you enjoy the club. I mean, that's why you're part of why you're a Rotarian. So you might find it actually hard to step back and say, how would an outsider, how would a prospective member, how would a guest speaker view my club? But I want you to try, because without being able to do that, it's going to be really hard to decide how to best increase your club's curb appeal. Now, that being said, some of you probably could rhyme off 10 things that you would like to do tomorrow, in order to enhance your club. And that's okay too. That's great that you have some things you're already thinking about. But just take 30 seconds or so and think, what does my club look like to an outsider or to a prospective member? What kinds of things would they notice? What would I want them to notice that they maybe wouldn't? Okay, think about that for about 15 seconds and then we'll move forward. Feel free to jot some down, jot some ideas down. If you are on with someone from your club, I know there's a couple people or a couple attendees where there's 2 or 3 in the room, feel free to discuss it. Feel free to throw some ideas out. Okay, so having thought about what your club's current curb appeal is or maybe isn't, I want you to think about your club's curb appeal 1 year from now, in the sense that you've been able to make some changes, you've been able to have some positive impact, and in your mind, you've increased your club's curb appeal. It's a little bit more, I guess, appetizing or enticing from an outsider's view. So what's different? What has changed? what I'd like you to do now is either unmute yourself or use the chat. Again, I prefer to unmute yourself because I can't quite find where the chat is at the moment. It was there and then disappeared. But just feel free to unmute yourself and just throw out a couple of words there to say, this is how my club would look different a year from now if I could work to increase the club's curb appeal. Go ahead and do that right now. Again, you will have to, actually, I'll unmute you all and we'll see if that doesn't wreak havoc on the sound, but here we go. There we go. So you're all unmuted, and you can let me know what your thoughts are in terms of what your club would look like a year from now.
And 2 or 3 other ones like that. Quite successful.
Hey, Kirk, if you hover over the bottom of your screen, that menu should come up so you can see the chat.
I think there's something different with mine because I'm presenting. I'm doing a share screen because I thought that as well, and then I was looking at where it should be, and it's not there. But let me see if I can find it again. Yeah, it's not coming up where it normally does. So feel free just to say it out loud while I'm looking for my chat bar here.
More members.
More members. Okay, so more members would make it more enticing. Okay, what else?
More structure.
More structure. Interesting. Okay, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean by more structure?
The 80-20 rule, where 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work and the rest are just going for lunch.
Okay, so that's currently what you have, and you're looking for. Sorry, no, that's what you want to see. You want 80% of the people. Okay.
Younger, appealing to the younger people.
Okay, so appealing to younger members. So you want a club that when a younger person looks out, they go, yeah, this is something I'm interested in. Now, being a younger person, as I'm often dubbed among Rotarians, I must say, I want you to think carefully when you say that, and I want you to think about what you mean when you say younger. Are we appealing to 21-year-olds? Are we appealing to, kids just out of school? Or are we maybe appealing to 40-year-olds? That's certainly younger. In a club where the average age might be 60 or 70, then 40 is also younger. So do keep that in mind as we continue to discuss, okay? But that is a good point. So younger members. What else?
Well, a year from now, I hope we'll have a major project that all people in the community are galvanized, get behind, and want to join Rotary.
Okay, great point. So a project, because that can really galvanize the club, and also is something that you can use to, again, increase that curb appeal. We're working on this great project. It brings the community together. It benefits the community. Awesome point. So a big project. What else? While we're waiting.
Atmosphere.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A welcoming atmosphere.
A welcoming atmosphere. Perfect. You folks are coming up with many things that I was already going to mention, so this is good. I'm not speaking to people that are going to be totally surprised, but you're right. I did mention at the beginning that when we talk about curb appeal, we often mean very much from a distance as an outsider, but we do talk about how does that guest feel when they walk into your club. So we will talk about that as well. That's great. And maybe one final one. Any final things that you think of when you visualize your club a year from now?
By attending a meeting and come in, there's a good buzz, maybe an interesting speaker, and everybody's happy, welcoming, getting along well with each other.
Perfect. So a good vibe. You walk in and not only are people welcoming, but you just feel like people get along and people enjoy each other's company. Maybe even they're friends. They're not just doing it for business networking. They're maybe friends and they enjoy each other's company. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to talk about now is some other things to consider, some that were already mentioned, but we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth, some that weren't mentioned. But as we're going, start to think to yourself, how do I get there? How do I start to think about implementing these? Yes, did someone have a question or a comment? No? Okay, I thought I heard someone say my name. Okay, I'm going to mute you all again as we continue. Again, if you do have a comment or a question, just unmute yourself and just say, hey, I have a quick question or comment. Okay, let's move forward. So, first thing, social media presence. I know we do have some clubs that say, social media is not really your thing, or rather our thing, but I will say that it's almost impossible to really get by these days without some sort of social media presence, even if it's a minor one. And this isn't just a plug for me being the social media chair, I can tell you that right now. It really is about, if you don't have a social media presence, if someone can't go to a computer and Google you, it's a little worrisome because who the heck are you if you don't have an online presence? That's sort of how people feel it nowadays, even some older people. So I think most of you are hoping to cater to younger people. I don't really think there's anyone that would say, I only want the club to feel welcoming to 90-year-olds. So in that case, you do have to have that social media presence. At a bare minimum, I'd say you're looking for probably a website. Many of you have those already via Club Runner, so that's great. The other one is certainly a Facebook page. And if you're curious about that, if you want to know more information, but you're maybe a little bit hesitant, check out the last webinar we did, the using Facebook pages. It really does start with, no knowledge of really how to set up a Facebook page or what it is, and really guides you through getting that page set up. Something else you might want to consider, and this is especially important if you are looking to attract younger members, and in this case, when I say younger, I'm talking about, I would say, 35 or 30 and younger. So you're really looking to get a young membership in their 20s and early 30s. Consider Instagram. The next public image webinar is actually about Instagram. It's in 2 weeks. So if you're a little bit hesitant, no problem. You can join that webinar, learn a little bit more about it, weigh the pros and cons. But it is where a lot of younger people are getting their social media from. I hear a lot of people say, oh, kids don't use Facebook anymore. They're all on Instagram. Well, that is partially true. You do have a lot of kids that use Facebook a lot less than they used to. But certainly Instagram is a good middle ground. A lot of people say, I've heard of this Snapchat thing. I don't know anything about it. I don't even want to get started. But Instagram feels a little bit more familiar to them, more so than Snapchat. And it doesn't move quite as quickly as Snapchat. But it does move a little bit faster than Facebook. So that's something to consider as well, is having an Instagram account for your club. Now, what I'm going to say for both of these, if you already have one, awesome. If you don't have one, I would consider getting at least a Facebook account, but with this caveat, it needs to be updated regularly. It is extremely frustrating to go to a Facebook page and the information is irrelevant, or rather outdated. It's not, it's a project that happened 3 years ago. The last update was suddenly from 2017. In fact, right now I'm working through a list of all the clubs in our district and just kind of doing getting the pulse of our club in terms of who has a Facebook page and who has a website. And sure enough, there are a number that have a Facebook page, and I get all excited and I click and I go, oh, the last time they posted was 2.5 years ago. And it's discouraging, because if I were a prospective member, my very first question would be, are they even still a club? Should I even bother to show up where this meeting time is showing at this day and at this time? Because I don't really even know if it exists, because it's been 2 years since they've done a post. So you want to keep that in mind, right? If you're going to post, or rather if you're going to have these accounts, you want to make sure you post regularly. Now, I'm going to step back, because I know some people go, oh, who has time for that? And you know what? Amen. I can feel that sometimes, that crunch of, oh my gosh, I haven't done a post in a couple days. You don't have to post weekly or daily in order to be a regular poster, in order to have a regular active account. I mean, Facebook will want you to. Facebook will send you a message every 2 days if you don't post. But if you're posting, I would say every 2 weeks minimum, one post every 2 weeks. It could be a photo from a meeting. It could be an update about some project that you're doing that you want the community to know about. Anything like that every couple weeks, and you're good to go. Because someone's going to log in and say, listen, they've done a post in the last 2 weeks. They're definitely still relevant. They're definitely still active. They'll probably be able to see that you're not a very, very active presence on social media, but they'll know that you're there. Okay? So you need to have a social media presence, but it doesn't have to be, all day, every day. Okay, moving along to the next piece. Membership, and I'm glad whoever it was brought that up. Are your members inviting or welcoming? I've spoken at a number of Rotary clubs. I've been involved with Rotary for a long time through Youth Exchange. So I've been to a number of Rotary clubs, and I've walked into ones where they're almost fighting over me to come sit at their table, and you kind of feel great. You kind of go, wow, I was invited to sit at 3 different tables, and now I actually feel bad because I don't know who to say no to. This is awesome. And then I've walked into other clubs where I sort of stand at the door, and I go, oh God, do I sit at the old white men's table, or do I sit at the women's table, or do I sit at the president's table because I'm a speaker and that's proper Rotary protocol? Will I have my wrist slapped if I don't? You start to get that feeling. Right? So which club would you feel more welcome walking into? Okay. I do think we want to still maintain that professionalism, and maybe that's sometimes why we see the clubs that are a little bit maybe colder, if for lack of a better word. I don't think they're meaning to be cold. They just have very much a protocol, and there's some decorum there. But we can be professional and still be inviting and still be welcoming. I just went to a Rotary meeting in London on Friday that wasn't my own, and I was so impressed that when I got there, there were only a couple tables. It wasn't as though there were 30 or 50 or 100 members, but each one said, oh, you can sit wherever you like. Would you like to sit there? Oh, no, if you sit there, you'll see the projector a bit better. Yeah, feel free to sit wherever. I felt very welcomed and very invited, okay? So you want to think about how a guest would feel. And this just isn't a prospective member. This might even be a guest speaker. I've heard countless times of guest speakers becoming members simply because they went, wow, I had such a good experience there. I felt so welcome there. It made me want to really learn more about what this whole Rotary thing is. So I took it from being a guest speaker there to now I'm a Rotarian in that club because of that feeling I got from that club. And so think to yourself, would a guest speaker, would a prospective member, would they want to come back? I really want to stress this if you're a club that typically invites young people. So if you have an exchange student, whether they're an inbound or an outbound, if you have a RILA participant, the Seminar for Tomorrow's Leaders, a Rotaractor, we all say, oh, we can't get the young people to come to our meetings. Well, did we make them welcome? Did we make them feel as though they'd want to come back? I get it. They're in a different generation. That can be hard to connect, but did we make the effort? So that's a big thing of curb appeal. Imagine if I'm just going to jump back here in sort of an analogy, maybe a silly way, but how much more welcoming would this picture feel if that woman was facing you saying, hey, come on in, and there was a dog there ready to greet you at the door? You'd feel even more welcome. Okay, so it's that idea of does it feel welcoming, and that certainly will increase the curb appeal. Okay, on to the meeting space, frequency, and time. This can be difficult because this is where you get into more of the logistics side. Sometimes changing up a location or a venue just isn't possible, but we do need to think about it. Is it an ideal meeting place, or is it a convenient meeting place? Is it, well, we've always met there and everybody knows where it is and it's just kind of easy because we've always done it that way? Or is it a place that people go, you guys meet there? That's really cool. I didn't even know you'd go to meetings there. Now, I'm not saying it has to be the youngest, hippest place in the neighborhood. I know a lot of Rotary clubs are now meeting at breweries and sort of, bar, grill, restaurants. And there's other clubs that say, oh, we don't really feel comfortable in that maybe relaxed of a place. We have a lot of members that still show up in suits and whatnot. And that's okay. That's okay. We're not saying you have to go meet at the hippest place you can find. You're not going to be necessarily meeting in the skate park next week. But can you think of maybe a place that would maybe be more inviting? A place that is really what your members are looking for? And that's what I mean by that last question, just to provide what your prospective members are looking for. Are your members looking to dress down and feel a little bit more casual when they come to a meeting? They've maybe been dressed up at work all day and they go, oh, it'd be nice to show up in jeans and a t-shirt and feel more like I'm meeting up with friends to do good work than actually meeting for a professional Rotary meeting. If that's the case, if that's what prospective members are looking for, then you need to change that. You need to think about what place would make them feel the most welcome, or what place is the most conducive to that attitude. Are people looking to have a drink? A lot of Rotary clubs, a lot of nighttime clubs, certainly you can order a drink, but daytime clubs or certainly breakfast clubs, that's probably not going to be an option. But again, is that something members are looking for? The club that I went to last week was a breakfast club. And of course, you get up early and you go, oh gosh, it's so early. But I will admit, the typical dinner club I go to or after hours club, you're having drinks. It feels very lax. It's a lot of fun. I was actually having just as much fun at this breakfast meeting, obviously no alcohol involved, but simply because of the membership, because they made me feel welcome and they made me feel, invited, and it was a good vibe. So what is it providing what your prospective members are looking for? And that can be difficult to ascertain because if you've been a member for a long time, you kind of know what you want from it and you know what you get out of it. So don't be afraid to go back to a guest speaker or an exchange student or just any guest and say, if I had invited you back as a guest instead of a guest speaker, what would have appealed to you? Or maybe what wouldn't have appealed to you? Was there anything that you went, oh gosh, I'm glad I'm not a member of this club? Because that's how you're going to learn what your prospective members are looking for. And it's only through knowing that you're going to be able to pick a meeting space that is conducive to fulfilling that. Okay? And then that also comes down to looking at frequency and time. Is your club currently meeting every week? Maybe you've done it for years. Maybe, that's just the norm. Is that necessary? Is that what's desired? Would your members prefer one meeting a month being sort of the business meeting, the typical get work done meeting, and another one being the interesting speaker meeting? I know in my own club, for example, we really struggled, our members really struggled to find extra time for committee meetings. They said, I already commit to coming to the meetings. To find time for extra committee meetings throughout the week is just really difficult. And so we started making one of our meetings more of a speaker meeting, and the other one being more of a business meeting. Let's get those committee meetings going. Let's get the work done. Now, I'm in a relatively small club, so it's relatively easy to kind of involve the entire membership in those committee discussions, as it were. So not always possible, but certainly something to think about. So, is it a frequency that fits for people? Or are they saying this is too much? I don't like feeling bad that I can't make it every week, but I just want to commit. I just can't commit that much. And then, of course, the meeting time. You know, a lot of clubs have done lunch clubs for a long, long time, and we see a lot of those fading out. So ask yourself, why is that happening? Is it because that's what prospective members are looking for, a little bit more flexibility? You know, maybe nighttime is better, maybe breakfast is better, or maybe it's lunchtime, but we really have to make sure we stick to that 1 hour. That can be a challenge for some lunch clubs. So a number of things to think about when it comes to meeting space, frequency, and time. Okay, next step, someone else was talking about structure, and here I want to talk about the meeting structure. Now, we did mention this a little bit in the previous slide, but you know, do you have interesting speakers? Are they speakers that someone else would want to hear, or did we get to the point where we would just take any speaker because we have to fill the speakers list? You know, I see Sylvia shaking her head. I've seen this before, right? You go to a meeting and you go, oh, he's a nice man or she's a nice lady, but oh gosh, they probably shouldn't be speakers. And you feel terrible. No one wants to say it, but you're all thinking it, you know. So you want to make sure you're having engaging speakers. And this is sort of the parallel that I draw, or the analogy I say, you know, for the younger generation, when they have the option of sitting on the couch in their pajamas, you know, eating their Ben and Jerry's with a spoon, and they can watch TED Talks from some of the best speakers in the world, and you're trying to drag them out of their pajamas on a cold winter's night to go listen to some speaker about God knows what, and who may or may not be a great speaker, I get it. The odds are stacked against you. It's tough. I understand that completely. But that does mean that we have to work extra hard to ensure that we're getting interesting, engaging speakers. And if we're finding that to be a challenge, then maybe we do need to look at our format and say, well, maybe we don't need a speaker every week. Maybe we get a speaker twice a month or once a month, and maybe in those other meetings, maybe one meeting is an event where we're out in the community doing good work. Maybe the next meeting is a business meeting, and maybe the third meeting is more of a networking event among our own members. So there's lots of flexibility there. And again, back to the curb appeal side, think about how a prospective member would look at that variety, you know, versus the potential of every week we come here, we eat, listen to a speaker, we eat lunch, we leave. Again, not say that's bad at all. If that's what your members are looking for, that's great. But you just want to make sure that that is what your members and your prospective members are looking for, and that it's not just, well, this is what we've always done. Okay? You also want to think about, are the meetings efficient? I've been to a lot of clubs where, you know, things like the Sergeant at Arms and other things, they're a lot of fun, but they can tend to drag on. And if you're a guest, and especially if you're a guest and you don't really know what this thing is, why are they suddenly begging people for money and forcing them to pay money? And what is that? You know, it can feel a lot. Announcements can be the same way. I've been to clubs where announcements dragged on for 20 minutes because the president kept going, does anyone else have an announcement? No? Anyone? No? Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Bob, you know, what's your announcement? And everyone went, oh gosh, why? No, we should have just not let Bob say anything. Now, certainly you want to let everyone in your club have a voice. I understand that. But, you know, you might want to set limits on that and say, in order for this meeting to stay 1 hour, we're going to do 10 minutes for announcements. You know, the Sergeant at Arms, you have 5 minutes. And, you know, anything else that doesn't get included during that time will be either in the newsletter or will be on the Facebook page or will be shared via email at a later date, or will be covered at the next meeting. So it does make sure that you kind of bump along, and it makes the meetings feel a little bit more exciting, a little bit more impactful than if it starts to drag into, you know, an hour and 15, an hour and a half. You know, studies have shown that we can hardly pay attention for more than about 10 minutes. So I'm already testing my luck with you folks at 25, but I think I'm doing well for now. But again, you know, if you're having a meeting that's dragging on beyond an hour, you really want to keep that in check. And with the efficiency, think back to speakers. I'm currently president of the club, and when I tell speakers to come to the meeting, when I ask them, I say, you have 15 minutes plus 5 minutes for questions. I put that in the email. I say, are you okay with that? They're aware. And then I let them know when they come to the meeting, I'm going to give you the hands up when you have 5 minutes left. And, you know, I think we often think of that as being rude. Oh, I don't want to cut them off. You know, they came all this way to speak to us. And instead, the reaction I get is, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, because sometimes I can go on without thinking about it, or I feel like I haven't said enough. So that would be really helpful because then I know exactly how much time I have left. So a good little strategy to make sure that that speaker doesn't go over time. All right, on to the next piece, the Rotary Story. This may be one of the most important aspects. And this does play into the membership piece. This, you know, whether or not people feel invited and engaged. Are you telling your Rotary story, and is your club telling a Rotary story? I in my sort of other hat, in my job, I've listened to a couple of webinars about 2019 and sort of social media trends. And you hear the word story being used a lot. So it's not so much about the company's mission or the company's vision, it's about stories. And one of the best ways to convey a message right now is to tell a story. And that's why Rotary has jumped on this bandwagon. It's a good one to be on. So are you telling your Rotary story, in person, on Facebook? Are you talking about why you're a member, why you like being a member? I had someone at, I believe it was the District Learning Assembly a couple years ago, say, I've had a couple people ask about, I guess it was just last year, but they said, I've had a couple people ask about, why they should join Rotary or whatnot. And I never seem to be able to really convince them. It never really works. They kind of ho-hum and they say, yeah, I'm interested, but then I never get a bite. And I always say, what I said to him, I said, what's your Rotary story? And he kind of goes, what do you mean? I said, well, why did you join Rotary? What do you like about it? And he kind of told me for a minute, and I said, perfect. And I said, now how relevant is that going to be to another prospective member? And they went, well, I don't know. I guess it depends what they're interested in. And I said, perfect. How are you going to know that? I don't know. I said, well, you probably have to ask them. And he kind of went, oh, that's a good point. I said, next time you're talking about Rotary, and part of the point here with the Rotary story is tell your Rotary story, but find out their story as well. Send to a prospective member, well, our club does 17 different projects and we got this award last year and we got the citation and that doesn't even mean anything, let alone do they care. Instead, turn around and say, what are you interested in? Why did you ask about Rotary? What is it that appeals to you? And speak to that. So if they don't mention the golf tournament or if they don't mention Rotary Youth Exchange, that might be your biggest passion, but maybe you want to put a cap on it for a minute and say, oh, you're interested in international service projects. Well, actually, our club did this really cool project. We're actually looking for people to help with it all the time. And then maybe a year later or two, they'll say to you, why did you join Rotary? We never really talked about that. And you can turn around and say, let me tell you my Rotary story. It's all about Rotary Exchange in my case, or whatever it might be. So, you want to keep that in mind. But again, you do want to tell the Rotary story. One thing I think we need to get away from is answering what is Rotary, right? We hear, so what is Rotary anyway? And you go, okay, well, do you have half an hour? Or, we don't know what to say. We don't know how little to say or how much to say. Instead, I think you want to tell your Rotary story. So when someone says, what's Rotary? Say, well, let me tell you what I like about Rotary, or what I feel about Rotary, or why I joined Rotary. You're still answering the question. It's by no means avoiding the question, but you're answering it in a more personal way. You're creating that rapport and that connection with that person, and that's going to be far more powerful than Rotary is a service organization with approximately 1.2 million members worldwide and 32,463 clubs as of June 30th, 2018. You'll engage that person much deeper. And that certainly plays into curb appeal, because that person's going to go, wow, you're really passionate about this. And you'll go, yeah, I am. I like making a difference and I like changing lives and I like the impact that we have as a Rotary club, and maybe you would too. Okay, so make sure you're telling your Rotary story. All right, that's all from me for the moment. Now I'm going to turn it to you and say, aside from the things we mentioned at the very beginning, and then of course what things I just listed off, what other things can you do, or maybe you already done that you'd like to share to increase your club's curb appeal? So maybe you've already been thinking of some things. Maybe when you registered for this webinar, you said, oh, I've already got the wheels turning. What were some of those things? Or, have I said everything? I know I haven't, but tell me what you think of when you think, how can I increase the club's curb appeal? So again, when I asked you the first question, I said, what do you want to change? Right? That was the what. This is the how. How are you going to do it? Okay, so I'm going to unmute everyone now. Feel free to shout out some answers. Okay, I think you're all unmuted. Perfect. Everyone's afraid to be the first.
We've added an evening session so that the public can be more or less invited and have a drink and learn informally about Rotary.
Perfect. Okay, an evening session. Now, is your club typically a lunch club or a morning or a breakfast club?
Lunch.
Perfect. So you've added a night session so that there's more flexibility perhaps for those that can't make it during a lunch meeting. Great.
Right. And a more casual way to work the crowd.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So you're appealing to those people that go, I already spent 8 hours in a suit. I'd rather show up in, jeans and a tank, or maybe not a tank, but like a polo or something more casual, right?
And ready for wine and beer.
Yeah, right. Okay, perfect. Other ideas and other things that you are thinking of doing or that you already have done? People are going, this is what you were supposed to tell us. What are you talking about?
Well, our club, we've just gone through quite a process in terms of determining meeting frequency. On a pilot basis, we reduced our meetings to two times a month, and now after basically about a 4-month test, we've gone back to 3 or 4 meetings a month, depending on how many Wednesdays there are in the month. But that is, whether that's totally aimed at people who aren't Rotarians right now, but it certainly is. We feel we've hit upon the right solution for our club, at least for the current membership base.
Perfect. Okay. So that's a great idea. I think that's something we do as well, is that we often shift to things that are a little bit more modern, or what, the younger clubs are doing, and then we get afraid to shift back. So it's actually good to hear that your club went to twice a month, tried it out, and then at the end kind of went, no, we actually prefer the way we had it. That's perfect. That's good. Anything else?
I'm a transplant from Waterloo. I was with Rotary in Waterloo and Windsor before that.
Mm-hmm.
Our club in Waterloo was going through quite a membership crisis. We were down to about 20 members. And we changed the format of the meeting. We were meeting at a place with linen tablecloths and napkins and stuff. It was fairly expensive. We went to a bi-weekly meeting at the curling club.
Mm-hmm.
And upgraded our social media presence. And we went from about 20 members to close to 60 in about 18 months.
Wow, that's amazing. That's fantastic.
Changed the demographics for a lot of young professionals.
Yep.
Much younger than the original club. So it turned out it worked quite well for us. But that was a very conscious change. And we lost some of the older members because they didn't like the change.
Yeah. And you often will, that's part of the, I guess if you want to call it a sacrifice, is that some of the older ones, and not just older in age per se, sometimes more in mentality. They say, oh, it's always been done this way. I like it this way. And you have to ask, okay, well, what's the net gain? Are we going to lose more members than we're going to gain? Often, if you're really, considering that much change, often the answer is going to be no, you're going to gain more members. But it can be a tough call, because you also don't want to, disrespect those members that have put in years of time and effort, for sure. With that kind of a success story, I feel like you should be leading this webinar, not me.
I was just a member of the club. I wasn't leading it, but no, we did quite well, and we had a lot of different clubs come and find out what we were doing. We were one of the first clubs that went to a bi-weekly meeting, and we had a lot of resistance both from the district and RI in doing that, but it worked out really well for us.
Perfect. And now here we are with RI and districts all over saying it's a good thing to do twice a month. So that's perfect. Yeah. Sometimes change has to come in that form. All right. Perfect. Okay. I know we're a little bit pressed for time, so I'm going to jump ahead and just talk quickly about the next step. So I don't want to leave this in the realm of, the cerebral discussion, and we've talked about it, but we haven't solidified anything. I want to provide you with some next steps to make this a real change in your club. So here's what you need to do. Focus on 2 or 3 things you want to improve or change about your club's curb appeal. It can be overwhelming doing an activity like this, because you come away with 15 things you want to change, and you start going, oh, my club's never going to be on board with this, or, it's going to be 30 years before I make all these changes. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, focus on the 2 or 3 things that you think will improve the curb appeal the most, okay? Or if you think you might have a stubborn club, or the club might be a little bit stubborn to change, then maybe pick 1 or 2 quick wins as opposed to the bigger things, and work your way up to the bigger things. And then the next thing you need to do is get your members on board. It can be, you're fighting a really big uphill battle if you're the only one that wants the change. So try to get other members on board. Try to understand where other members that maybe don't want the change are coming from, so that you can help them understand why you do want the change. You don't want this to be a top-down thing where these are the changes we're making and none of you have a say, and I'm innovation chair, so I get to do these. You want the club to be on board so that you mitigate any loss of members, and that the people in your club see it as positive change. Then you want to create an action plan to ensure that they begin to happen. And the sooner you do that, the better. It's one thing to say, we're going to have all these great changes in the club, and people go, oh, exciting. And then it goes to the, this committee for approval, and then this task for that, and then this board approval for that. And 8 months later, we go, okay, we're now ready for change 1. We will create a Facebook page, right? You want to keep that momentum going. You want to keep the members charged and motivated by working quickly. And again, that's not always possible given certain limitations in the club, but if you can have, those first changes kind of underway and rolling out in just a couple months, that's a good timeline. That's a good goal. And then you want to keep your club engaged and motivated by keeping them in the loop. Don't be that sort of rogue person that, mentions you're going to do something, or maybe doesn't even really mention it and tries to just sort of do it under the covers or whatnot. Be in the open and speak up at your meetings and be one of those announcements and say, hey, I want to tell you about this new initiative, or I want to talk about this thing that we said we were going to do. I want to show you that it's happening, and I want to show you that it's exciting. We've got 2 or 3 new members, so get them on board and show them that it's working. So don't just kind of fall to the wayside and think, oh, I'm just kind of fighting this on my own or doing this on my own. Get your other members on board and keep them on board by keeping them updated. And then once you've accomplished those 2 or 3 things, go back and pick 2 or 3 more and start again, right? You've made 1 or 2 changes. Maybe they've been big or maybe they've been small, but they are changes. So your club's already going to be a little bit more malleable, a little bit more pliable. So then press on and do the next thing, okay? The next changes. Okay, quick minute for questions if there are any.
Kirk, I have a question about websites.
Yep.
So I've been trying to update our website and I'm unable to update the header, which actually has some old information in it. If we have our own website address, is that something that we can use through a Club Runner website?
That's a good question, and I don't actually know the answer to that. I would assume that you can link it to Club Runner, but I don't know for sure. If you send me a separate email about that, I can follow up and let you know.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, any other questions?
Kirk, it's Jerry McGregor
Hi,
speaking.
Jerry.
Speaking to your things to do list, one of the things that we're in the process of organizing for our next meeting is what I would call a workshop.
Yep.
We've come to understand that, or come to realize that too many of our members are not familiar enough with our own website and in particular the members pages and some of the things that we've changed recently. So we're planning our program at our next meeting is going to be a workshop where we're hoping to have 6 or 8 or 10 computers in the room, and we'll have people working around and we'll kind of walk through
smart. Okay.
Of the website and have them take a look at the Facebook page and, just kind of encourage more involvement, and that it kind of speaks to number 2 about getting members on board. And also,
yeah, that's great. That's a great idea.
So we're it's one of those forehead slapping things where we once we twigged what was going on, we thought, why haven't we done this before?
Yeah. You go, oh, if only, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. That's a great idea. Let me know how that goes, actually, because that's certainly something that other clubs I think would benefit from as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
All right. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry. You put me on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, we just had Wi-Fi installed in our meeting place, so that's
perfect.
Difference. That also we're trying to do people coming in on Skype to attend meetings if they wish.
Yes, that's great.
And we've also got a liquor license, so now we can have a drink too. So
I got to switch to your club. Wi-Fi and liquor license, we're good.
And they've come slowly. I mean, we've talked about them probably for the last 3 years that I can remember, and finally we've done them. So sometimes it takes a while to convince people we need to move on.
Yeah, and Sylvia, going back to my point, I'm glad you brought that up, because going back to my point of, make it happen in a couple of months, you're right, there are certain changes that just can't because of logistics or maybe because of a budget restraint. But, don't give up. If you set up a plan and it's a realistic plan, then like you've done, follow it through and keep pushing and saying, we know we want this. I know it's taking longer than, we kind of would expect or maybe we hoped, but it is worth it, and we know we're going to reap the benefits once it's there. So, yeah, be that sort of cheerleader for the campaign, as it were. Yeah, that's great. All right, any final questions?
Well, just perhaps, Tony, just picking up on Jerry's comments on holding a workshop. If that's a success, Jerry, what I suggest you also think about holding one for the Rotary International, Rotary.org website, because there's loads of information on there, which most of our members don't even think about looking. And you don't even have to be a member to, even have to have a My Rotary login to look at a lot of stuff. But if you then encourage them to have a My Rotary login, there is lots of material. And one of the great additions to it recently is the addition of the Learning Center.
Mm-hmm.
The Learning Center provides a lot of online learning, similar to what we've just gone through this evening, and it's constantly being updated. And certainly Kirk and I and one or two more are looking at how we might use that for the district in the future to provide district focused learning. But the point being is is if you could take them round the Rotary.org site, there's lots of information about Rotary and what Rotary does around the world.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. But we have to sort of work from the lowest common denominator, and we're going to go in baby steps. If we can
start at the bottom up. Yep.
Yeah, make the club familiar with our own website and Facebook page and club brochure and all the rest, then we can spin out from there to the RI site, etc. But
yeah. No, Jerry, I totally agree with that. Start with your own. But I said at a future event, say 3 or 4 months' time, if that's a success, why not take them through the Rotary website?
Yeah. Just add one more thing. That the other thing that we've started doing with our club bulletin or newsletter is that we are getting in the habit of embedding links, more and more links into the newsletter, which leads them off to information that we can't possibly put into the bulletin, but might be pertinent. And even if 10 people or 6 people look at it, then that's further ahead than we were.
And it keeps the bulletin to a reasonable size. A lot of times you get that newsletter that's 400 pages long and you go, oh, not even going to open it. I can just already tell. So when it's shorter, people can choose what they want to read more of. It definitely gets a higher readership for sure.
They're not supposed to be 400 pages long?
Yeah, right? I think that violates some kind of policy if they're under 200. Right, perfect. Okay, thanks for the comments and questions, folks. Okay, so just a quick mention of the upcoming webinars. The next one is in 2 weeks, and it's to Instagram or not to Instagram. So if that was a thought you had tonight, certainly sign up for that webinar. And then a month from then is the hashtags sharing and commenting Oh My webinar. And on May, the last one of this Rotary year, we'll be using images and videos from the Rotary Foundation and Rotary International. And you can register for each of those webinars on the public image page of the district website. And I will include a link to that page in the YouTube recording of this webinar, which I'll put up and will be available on the public image page in a couple of days. Okay, that's everything from me. So without further ado, thanks very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.